up, everybody? Welcome to Development Camp 2019. We're live inside Little Caesars Arena at the BELFOR Training Center. Very excited to be here and kicking off your 2019-2020 season. I'm Daniela Bruce, joined by Art Regner of DetroitRedWings.com and host of the Red and White Authority podcast. And we've got Ken Kale over here too, your Red Wings play-by-play announcer on 97.1 The Ticket. Guys, thanks so much for being here, as always.
Our pleasure.
Yes, definitely.
Great to be here. Hockey season just ended with the Stanley Cup Championship, and here we are, starting for 2019-20.
It's so exciting, and guys, we will be here every day this week for development camp starting at 11:30. So we've got today, tomorrow, Thursday, Friday. I'm sorry, today's Wednesday. So we've got today, tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday. Look at that. So we'll be in the big rink actually at the end of the week. That will be very exciting. And a new thing on Friday, they started that 3-on-3 tournament. We'll talk a little bit more about that. That will be very, very exciting for the fans. And let's get into talking the draft, you guys. That just happened this past weekend. Art, you were in Vancouver, so we'll start it with you. Give me your overall thoughts. We picked up 11 players in that draft. What'd you think?
Well, it couldn't get any more even than 5 defensemen, 5 forwards, and a goaltender. I think it's pretty apparent. 3 out of the first 4 picks were defensemen. Moritz Seider going at number 1, 6 overall. Kind of surprised everybody, but I think it's pretty apparent right now that Steve Yzerman has targeted. We've got to bring in a bunch of defensemen right now. We've got to really rebuild our blue line. You can always use players, all over the ice, but I think it was a draft where I think defense was a priority.
I agree with the Art, and I think the Red Wings need defensemen, and I think going forward, you see it with Steve Yzerman's first draft, is that they got a plethora of defensemen right now. He's looking ahead to the future as to a nice core that's going to be here for a long, long time.
And throughout the week, we're going to take a look at all of these players, starting with Team How today. So let's kick things off with, like you said, kind of a surprising pick, Moritz Seider at number 6 overall. Let's take a look back at his Friday night.
Larkin geht mit Goodrow.
Gut von Seider übergeben.
Und Chance für Goodrow und gleich.
Just the opportunity to see him. He was one of the few guys I actually did see. Steve asked me my opinion on him, and my opinion is that he's going to be a real good defenseman for a long time. I always try to temper my expectation, but certainly he looks like a guy who can be a top 4D and help you win hockey games. Now, does he become a top pair D? We'll see. That's all in time, but he looks like a guy to me. Again, for me, you need big, efficient, smart defenseman, and he's that.
With the 6th pick in the draft, the Detroit Red Wings select from Mannheim of the DEL, Moritz Seider.
You can hear the reaction here in this arena, and we're smiling because, you know what, Steve Yzerman alluded to this earlier. This is where at 6 things get interesting because the rankings and ratings, well, they're all over the place once you get past maybe the 5 or 6, but you did not see this coming either way.
We felt kind of the top 5 kind of went somewhat as we expected, and there's a group of players, this next group of players, including Moritz, there's very good prospects. They're all good prospects. Ultimately, what we liked is a big defenseman who can skate, who has excellent hockey sense, and again, there was a lot of players to choose from. It wasn't a no-brainer, but we're excited to get him.
He said just be calm and enjoy the moment because my hands were so shaking, I was so sweaty, and it's just a fun experience being here. Yeah, I mean Mannheim and Detroit, I think they have a lot in common. They're both worker cities, so I think that's going to be easy. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to being Detroit. I would say smart two-way defenseman who loves to join the rush, creating space for his teammates, but also is not afraid to play the body on the ice. I would say.
Everybody else? Awesome. Maybe some. Turn it to 120. Oh baby! We've been waiting for this.
Are you sure they don't want us to talk about Al Sabat?
Oh, this is like boy band stuff.
What? That One Direction, what? Yeah. That flow is important.
That was a great head of hair.
We explored options to possibly trade back. We weren't able to do that, and we're pretty excited to get him. So I know our fans don't know much about him, but I think people come to development camp and see him move. Google them, watch them play a little bit. I think they'll be pleasantly surprised.
Wow. 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 Very good.
Hey, das war wow. Alter, oder? Ja? Ich habe null damit gerechnet.
Sure, I mean, I got my equipment here in Vancouver. Looking forward to be on the ice next week and challenging on the ice again. I think it's going to be a perfect opportunity, getting better in the off season.
So all in German.
Okay, hallo Detroit-Fans. Ja, mein Name ist Moritz Seider. Ich freue mich schon riesig, euch alle kennenzulernen. Ich bin richtig pumped, freue mich auf die neuen Herausforderungen und ja, ich denke, wir sehen uns bald. Ich freue mich riesig und ja, ciao.
Must have been a very, very exciting night for young Moritz Seider to go at 6 so unexpectedly. He actually caught up with the media in his scrum. Let's see what he had to say about coming to Detroit.
I mean, there was a little percentage. We got a couple of good meetings with Detroit, and Steve Yzerman want to know every single thing about me. So, but yeah, I mean, when you saw a couple of rankings there, I wasn't that high at any of them. So yeah, it was. I'm just excited. Still, it's an unreal moment. Yeah.
What did Steve ask you? He said he wanted to know everything about you.
I mean, sure, he wanted to know me as a person. He wanted to know everything about my parents, what they did for me. So yeah, we decided to move to Mannheim, so they quit their jobs. There was a huge commitment. Yeah, it was just in total great meetings with them.
What do you know about the Red Wings?
I mean, not that much, but there's going to be a lot more to come, I think. And yeah, I mean, Mannheim and Detroit, I think they have a lot in common. They're both worker cities, so I think that's going to be easy. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to being Detroit.
How would you describe yourself as a player?
I would say smart two-way defenseman who loves to join the rush, creating space for his teammates, but also is not afraid to play the body on the ice, I would say. Yeah.
What was the biggest improvement in your game this past season?
I'd say challenging every single day against pro, I think. It was a huge step for me stepping in pro hockey, messing up with a lot of good guys in Germany. So just learn how to prepare yourselves for important games and especially playoffs games. So I think that was a huge step for myself.
Were you a Nick Lidstrom fan growing up?
I'm sure. I mean, he dominated the game, and he was also pretty physical. So yeah.
What do you think this says about German hockey and their ability to develop top talent?
I mean, it's great to present Germany here and maybe in the NHL someday. And yeah, I mean, German hockey is going in the right direction. I think we had a first rounder last year with Dominic, this season me. So and there were a bunch of young talented guys coming after me, I think.
Do you see yourself staying with Mannheim next season, or do you have to sort of make that decision later?
I think we have to settle down in a couple of meetings and figure out what's best for myself, where I can play the most, where I can learn the most, and where I feel comfortable, I think.
What was the first thing that went through your mind when you heard your name?
I had no idea. I was just shocked. My hands are shaking, my legs are so shaking, and I looked to my mom, and she was so shocked. I think she was way more nervous than I am before. Yeah, and it was great to have them around here.
What did your mom's name?
Sabine.
You had mentioned that they had quit their jobs. They obviously thought that you were only 13, that you must have been very talented and had a chance to be in this position.
I mean, honestly, when you play in Germany, it's not that usual that you be drafted someday. I mean, and it was just making a step going to Mannheim. Mannheim is one of the top organizations in Germany. That was the biggest step for myself and at that moment. So yeah, and that was a huge commitment that my parents made. So yeah, I'm just happy to pay a little bit back now.
How much did it help you playing in the men's league? Did they really help you progress that season?
Sure, I mean, they're all so experienced. Some of them won a cup, some of them won German championships, and some of them have over 700 NHL games. I think it was the perfect opportunity for myself, challenging, getting better as a player, but also I think it's very important getting better as a person. And just hanging around with all those experienced guys, getting to know their family, that was a huge step for myself as a person, I would say.
Going back to the combine, were the Red Wings one of the teams that seemed the most interested in you, just from all the questions you talked about?
In the end, I would say yes, because it was the longest meeting I had at the combine. It was about 40 minutes. and it was the last meeting, so I think that's gonna stuck in my memories for a long time. And yeah, in the end, I think there was just a little percentage being drafted by Detroit, but I think in the end it went off pretty well.
Did Steve say anything to you up on stage? Or?
He said just be calm and enjoy the moment, because my hands were so shaking, I was so sweaty, and yeah, I mean it's just a fun experience being here.
Just what's it like to wear this jersey? I mean, being 6th overall.
Yeah, I mean it's insane. I can't describe it in words. So yeah. So.
What jobs did your parents quit?
They are in a managing position of an old folks' home, so they're taking care about old people. And I think we can move anywhere in Germany, so they will all find new jobs. But yeah, I mean that's not normal. Going from a safe job, save money to the unknown, and build up a new journey. So I think in the end it was the right decision. They made new friends. They have a perfect job. We have a nice house there. Yeah.
Did you have a pick in mind where you might go, where you might end up?
I would say somewhere between 15 and 20, I would say. That was I hoping to, but now it's a little bit different. But yeah, I think I'm pretty happy about that.
How did you get started playing hockey in the first place?
When I was 5, we had the chance in kindergarten to jump on the ice once a week, and after a couple of times I got a little piece of paper in my stall from the hockey organization in Erfurt, my hometown. And yeah, on the next Monday I went there, we skated around with all those pros, and it was such a phenomenal feeling, and it was great atmosphere skating around with your idols, I would say, your role models. So that was the first touch. I fell in love with hockey, I would say.
Have you been to Detroit?
Not yet, but it's going to be pretty soon, I think.
Are you looking forward to development camp? I mean, just to kind of get a feel for the place?
Sure, I mean, I got my equipment here in Vancouver. Looking forward to be on the ice next week and challenging on the ice again. I think it's going to be a perfect opportunity, getting better in the off season.
You also had the chance to play with men at World Championships this year. What was that experience like, playing against some guys who you may see some advantage?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was great to mess with some of the best guys in the world, and I think I did a pretty good job. There was a first game, exhibition game in Mannheim. I was a little bit nervous, got toe dragged by Kane. At that moment I realized, okay, it's just play your game, be simple, play simple hockey, I think, and I would say I finished pretty strong, and yeah, it was just a great feeling, and even on the World Championship, yeah, it was great too.
Moritz, we know you like your fashion. Is there any thought?
Great to hear from him and how excited he is to be in Detroit. He told a story during that scrum about his family and how they had to move for him to play hockey. They kind of gave up everything. What did you guys think of that? That's a big commitment, and then not to really know what your future holds.
I think there isn't a player that hasn't been drafted, I think over the years, that has not talked about the sacrifice that their families have made for them. Mo Seider was talking about it, and everyone goes, wow, what do your parents do? And I guess they have jobs that are very well sought after in Germany. So he kind of blew it off and said, listen, they can find work, don't worry about it. But I mean, it's a testament to obviously the love that a parent has for their child, and to do anything, and then for him to be able to reciprocate it by being a #1 draft choice of the Detroit Red Wings or going into the NHL. It's just a good feeling. The draft is a good day for everyone, because everyone's so high. The expectations are high. They're fulfilling their dreams. So great story. He is a terrific young man and a very, very smart hockey player.
I think all parents that have hockey players, they take their kids to the rink in the morning, and whether you make it to the National Hockey League or not, there's always that sacrifice that the parents make, for their sons or even now their daughters if they want to become hockey players. And, I think that's great. And I think as the players move along, they go back and they thank their parents for it, but it is a great sacrifice.
And let's move on to this subject. I know, Ken, you and I talked a lot on the forecheck in this past season about prospects and who the Red Wings might take at number 6. And nobody really was talking about Seider. They were talking about guys like Cole Caulfield, Dylan Cousins. So when you heard that we were drafting Moritz Seider 6th overall, what did you guys think?
Well, I think for many people it was a surprise, but really, I know Art and I were talking about this before we started the stream here, is that he was a highly sought-after defenseman, and a lot of people had him projected 10th or lower, but that doesn't mean he's not a very good defenseman down the road. He's got size, he's got skill, he's good defensively in his own zone. He can shoot the puck with the best of them, and I really like the size factor, and I think that'll make him so much closer to the National Hockey League than if they took a defenseman that was undersized.
He played in a men's league. He played against men basically at 17 years old and was the Rookie of the Year in the DEL. And so I look at it this way. We all thought if Byron Bowen was gone, and he was, by 6, that it was such a high-end draft for forwards that the Red Wings would be compelled to take a forward. We talked to Steve about it, and he agreed with that assessment. I mean, he didn't tip his hand, but he said, yeah, it's pretty heavy in forwards. So I guess the general assumption was, I was not surprised that they took a defenseman just because when you really look at it and examine it and you're objective, the Red Wing blue line is old. They're just old. I mean, they're relatively young men, especially coming from a guy like me, but they're still old in hockey. They're hockey old. And I think that, they tried to trade down, and it wasn't going to happen. And there were rumblings that some team was going to take them in the top 10. They're at 6. You like a player. It's always the best draft philosophy is if you really like a player and he's available, you should take him. And that's exactly what the Red Wings did.
And Steve Yzerman said on Friday in one of his interviews to the fans, kind of addressing the people that might not know who Moritz Seider is, he said, Google him, watch him play a little bit, and maybe that's because the German Hockey League really isn't in the spotlight like all of the other countries. And I watched a little bit, and he looks pretty dominant out there.
I think, Daniela, when people look at players that are drafted, especially in the first round, it's always good to go with the top picks, the picks that most people who follow the National Hockey League, then when the Red Wings took Mo Seider, everyone's going like, well, who is this guy? Because he really wasn't talked about like some of the other players that were involved in the draft. And like I said before, it doesn't matter, if you were picked in the top 10 or not. He is a really good hockey player. And some of the people that I've talked with on Saturday around the league, former players, they said, look, you're going to be salivating in 3 to 5 years because this guy is going to be an outstanding defenseman. And the other thing about the Red Wings is they're building a core that's going to be together for a long period of time down the road, and a core of young defensemen.
Right, I couldn't agree more with Ken, and I think the thing about Seider is that if you look at his skill set and where he's at a relatively young age, how can you not help but like him? I mean, defensemen, a right-handed shooting defenseman too, they're at a premium. And he was a guy that was moving up draft boards. Every time a new mock draft would come up or a new rating system, here was this German kid who was, back at, first of all, he was in the, 26, 27. By the time the draft came, he was in the top 15. And so that really tells you something. It tells you what kind of player he is. And again, I can't stress it enough. He's playing in a men's league. He's a teenager, and he's Rookie of the Year in that league. I don't care if it's the German league or, the Royal Oak Youth League. I mean, that's an accomplishment.
And obviously addressing the needs on the blue line, as we have said already. Another thing that I've read about Mo Seider is that he can run a power play. And I think that's something that has been very important to the Red Wings, something they need to improve on. So what do you see in him from that perspective? Ken, we'll start with you.
Well, I just think that the Red Wings in the past have been offensively challenged back there, especially on the power play, and it's hard to find somebody who can handle a point. One of the things that I think players that are skillful on the blue line on the power play is, first of all, they see the ice well, and secondly, they're not afraid to shoot the puck. The problem with youngsters when they, let's say, get out onto the ice and they're 18 or 19 years old, and maybe they're manning a power play or they're back there on the blue line, they're looking for other players to pass to and maybe give up a shot that they need to take. So I think that it's important to get offense is to make sure that if you're a young player, shoot the puck from the line if the chance is there.
Well, I think another thing, adding to Ken's point, is that Steve Yzerman kept saying he has great hockey sense. He has great hockey sense. And if you're going to quarterback a power play, you have to have great hockey sense. You have to be 2 or 3 moves ahead of what you're going to do. And he seems to have that. Another thing that I really liked about Mo Seider is that to a person, when you talk to them and they break it down, he's a definitive 1 or 2. he is, the Red Wings have been looking for a top pair defenseman, a 1 or a 2, for quite a while now. I mean, there's some guys you think, well, if he pans out, he could maybe be a number 2. Seider is projected to be a number 1 or a number 2 defenseman. That's exactly what the Red Wings were looking for, and hopefully they have it.
So projected to be a number 1 or 2. Realistically, what do you guys think? Is there a chance he'll be up here in the fall?
You know what? I just think that in today's NHL, Danielle and Art, general managers or coaches aren't going to put a player in a position where he's not going to develop. And they're not going to put him in a situation where he's not going to be able to flourish. So let's keep this in mind. Everybody thought, including myself, that Phillip Zadina was going to be a part of the team come October at the start of the season, and he wasn't. He wasn't ready. But that's okay. I mean, players need time to develop. And it's very rare that an 18-year-old can come in the National Hockey League and play. Just ask Steve Yzerman. He played, but it's hard. It really is. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in the preseason. He'll get a good look at Seider in the exhibition games and then make a decision based on his play.
Well, what's interesting, he could go back. The DEL, his Mannheim team, the facilities there are second to none. I mean, if he were to go back to Germany, it's a good program. He's not really walking back into the dark ages or something, but there's some sort of weird rule, and hockey has a zillion of them, as Kenny can attest to, that even though he has a waiver where he could actually play in Grand Rapids next year in the AHL, and he's not 20 years old. It's not like why Michael Rasmussen last year had to either stay in Detroit or go back to Tri-City in the Western League, and the Red Wings said, look, he's a Western League, there's nothing there for him, so he stayed up here in Detroit. Well, Seider, they have the ability to watch him from a close distance in Grand Rapids, and I think that, and that's really interesting. I mean, I've tried to look into exactly what that waiver is, and I asked Steve about it, and he said, my understanding is that Mo Seider can play for Grand Rapids next year. I would be willing to bet, considering he's already played in the men's league, and the AHL is a tough league, second toughest league in the world, I think you might see him with the Griffins next year.
Well, there's a lot of excitement around him and the rest of this draft class, but whether Mo's up here or not, Red Wings fans should be excited for October 6th. Dallas in town for opening night this year. What do you think of that matchup, guys? That's going to be a fun one on a Sunday night.
Well, it's always fun to see Jim Nill bring his club. He was such a big part of this Red Wing organization for years to come. And, hey, they had a pretty good run in the playoffs, so hey, why not open up with a good team like the Dallas Stars?
Yeah,
I'm excited about it because I know you two will be doing the forecheck. We'll be doing the big screen show.
That'll be the screen show. I can't wait. We've got a lot coming in that. The big screen show this year. We might make it the art show because he runs that one. Man. He runs that one.
Hey, Dallas is a great team. I'm looking forward to this season because I know Steve is preaching patience. I'm really interested to see what that 23-man roster is going to look like. I think that he said, look, I'm going to make some calls. They can start calling free agents next Monday, July 1st. I would not be surprised if the Red Wings don't add a player or two.
And keep in mind, free agency's coming up July 1st, so there could be some changes coming up. There could be some deals.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to be another exciting time period for the Red Wings, wondering what Steve will do then. And guys, our schedule comes out today, the full schedule for the 2019-20 season at noon. So just a few minutes away from the schedule being released. Anything you guys are specifically looking forward to?
Well, I like being home around the holidays, so I'm hoping that the holidays are good for the Red Wings and that they're at home for the fans here in Detroit.
I am going to make a prediction because when Ken Holland stopped by to say goodbye to the staff, he kept telling everybody he'll see us in Edmonton in October. So I think the Western Canada trip is going to be in October this year.
That'd be a pretty good time. Yeah, that'd be a good time to head out there, right? Not so cold. Yeah, not so cold.
Calgary and Edmonton in October, beautiful.
Well, let's get to talking some more Red Wings prospects here. We're going to kick this off with Kaden Fulcher. So, guys, I'm going to let you take it away. Art, let us know.
What a terrific story Kaden Fulcher is. He was a camp draftee, or an invitee, pardon me, and he earned enough, he impressed the Red Wings staff enough to go to the prospects tournament and then training camp, and then earned a contract with Detroit. They signed him. He won the OHL in Hamilton, and then played for Grand Rapids this year. And Red Wing fans will remember he actually got a bit of a cup of coffee here with all the injuries when Jonathan Bernier got hurt, and actually played in the game for the Red Wings this year.
Well, he appeared in that last game of the season against the Buffalo Sabres, and I really wanted to see him come in a better situation. And it's hard for a goaltender playing in your first game in the NHL while you've been cold sitting on the bench. But you know, he's got a bright future, I guess. He's 6'3", 182 pounds. And one of the things that he was talking about last season was that he worked on getting his mindset right for becoming a goaltender. And a lot of that was not allowing bad goals. And if a bad goal was let in, to just forget about it and just letting go of bad games. So I think from a goaltender's mental point of view, that is huge.
And do you think being up with the Red Wings can help that? I know he didn't play much up in Detroit, but that mental capacity and playing at that level, can that be something that helps?
Anytime you can pick the brain of a Jimmy Howard or a Jonathan Bernier, or just sit in an NHL room and just kind of soak it in, I think obviously it does help you. And I think that Kaden Fulcher, I think the toughest thing for a goaltender is, and Chris Osgood was great at this because he let in some doozies, is after you let in a bad goal, you have to forget about it. And that might be the definitive moment, whether a guy really has to make it or not, is he able to put that behind him and get ready for the next shot? And Kaden Fulcher has been able to do that. It was a tough transition for him. He also needed to work well with his hands and get a little bit quicker, because in the ECHL, AHL, once you get into pro hockey, the game is much, much faster and much quicker.
You know, Art and Daniela, Toledo had a really good run last year. He played 28 games. His record wasn't bad at 15-7 and 4-1 shutout. But I'd like to see that save percentage get up over, 90, 91%.
Oh, yeah.
His save percentage, even though he had a pretty good record, was .989. I think to play in the National Hockey League and to really be effective, and you need help from your forwards and defensemen coming back. But if you really want to stick in this league, that save percentage has to be around 910, 915 at least.
And we're looking forward to see what he can do in the future. And we've been talking a lot of defense, how that's something the Red Wings have really been trying to address here. Let's talk about Malte Setkov. He's a Danish defenseman. He was taken in the 4th round in 2017.
Well, he's big and lanky and has a lot of hair. I think.
Seider,
wait,
right?
does he have better hair than you are?
Well, at least I still have my hair. No, I would say this, that Setkov is a guy who doesn't have much of an offensive game yet. I think the Red Wings would like to see him develop a bit of an offensive game. But as far as a defensive game and a shutdown defender, he's there. They like it. He again is a guy who is, even though he sounds like he should be Russian, with Setkov, he's from Denmark. He's a Dane who travels to Sweden to play hockey. And that alone, the Red Wings like that character, because even in the offseason, he could still train in Denmark, but he still decides, and it's not that far. It's like going from Metro Detroit to Windsor. But he still takes every day and drives to Sweden to work out, and he's very, very committed, and that's what they really, really like about him. If he adds an offensive game aside to himself, if he can start scoring a little bit of goals, I think, in assists, getting some points, I guess I should say, I think that, he could have a future in Detroit.
I think Art and Daniela, when you look at, there's a pattern here on the blue line. We're seeing a lot of big, strong defensemen. Setkov, we talked about Seider and his size. This is a big guy. You look at him out on the ice right now, and he towers over everybody. He's 6'6". On skates, he's probably like 6.8. Or 6'8", and he breathes different air than anybody else on the ice. But a couple of things I really like about him, and I like this about all defensemen, is if you can make that first pass out of your own zone, that alleviates so much problems out of your own end. If you can't make that first pass, you're in trouble in the National Hockey League. He has that ability to do that. And also, being a big defenseman, he uses his size and reach to take the puck away from opponents. He's got that long stick, and he can force them over to the walls and not make them cut inside, make them go to the outside. And those are two key elements in big, strong players, and he certainly can do both of those.
Right, Ken's absolutely right. You're not going to, if you're going to try to move towards the net with him defending you, it's not going to happen. For one thing, because of his reach, he can take the puck away from you, and you won't even know it's gone. And he just needs to get stronger. I mean, he's a string bean. Actually, he's filled out a little bit since last year, but he is 6'7" and not even 200 pounds. He just needs to hit the weight room a little bit.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to take a quick break from talking about our prospects here. As I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the development camp schedule, the new thing this year is Friday night. We're going to have a 3-on-3 tournament, which is going to be very exciting. So leading up to that, we're going to count down our favorite 3-on-3 overtime game winners from the past season. So let's kick it off with our number 4.
Now Smith turned it over. Here's Larkin cutting out in front, trying to end it. Sends it in front of the ring. Score! He passed it out in front of the goal, and Anthony Mantha with the game winner early after the turnover by the Vegas Golden Knights. And the Red Wings charge out onto the ice, defeat Vegas 3-2 in overtime.
And that was Anthony Mantha in Vegas last year from Dylan Larkin. That was actually a really big game that they won out on the West Coast.
Well, they were winning a lot of games there towards the end of the season. Yeah, I mean, I remember that goal. You know, I think if we found something, Dylan Larkin 3-on-3, obviously a tremendous player. Mantha with his shot. But the real surprise, a guy who is just very impressive 3-on-3 is Danny DeKaiser.
Yeah.
Because he can skate.
And he's really contributed a lot, not only scoring goals, but passing as well. And, you know, a guy that we always tend to forget, I guess, is Andreas Athanasiou. He's electrifying, especially when it comes to 3-on-3.
3-on-3 is always very exciting. That's why they're going to have the tournament. That's Friday night at 6 o'clock. I just want to ask you guys, why do you think the 3-on-3 is something that they wanted to add to development camp? What can you see in players that's different from watching a 5-on-5 game?
Well, I don't know how much is different because it is a skills competition. I mean, guys can put on some moves and, you know, they can have a little bit of fun. I think fans love it. I really do. I think that fans like it, and it's another way maybe to showcase some of the Red Wings' high-end skill talent, and you know, and see if where these. I'm sure goalies hate it. I'm sure they're saying, hey, you know, let's put in, you know, like Larsson's going to come down with you know, a case of the flu or something. But I just think it's fun. I really think it's fun. You've seen how Little Caesars Arena gets in the in overtime, and then on the 3-on-3. People love it, and I think it's a good addition.
You know, I'd like to see it go longer. Go 10 minutes instead of 5, and try to eliminate the shootout. I think the fans really like 3-on-3 more than the shootout now.
Yeah, 3-on-3 is a lot of fun. Art, you mentioned the goalie's not liking it so much, and we'll talk about Larsson a little bit later, but let's talk about another one of our goalie prospects. It's Victor Brattstrom, Swedish goalie.
Big goalie, had a good year. Red Wings are really high on him. I think that if you look at, you know, it's kind of strange is that even though the skaters are going a little bit smaller, it doesn't matter the size, it really does seem the move tends to be now towards the bigger goaltender. Brattstrom is certainly one of those players. You know, unflappable. You know, the Swedes are fairly calm from the Swedes that we've known throughout the years. They don't get rattled too much, and obviously being a goaltender, that's what you need.
I think goaltenders really blossom as they get older, and he's a little bit older than some of the people now. He's 22 years old right now. He was born in 1997. Now, I think the Red Wings would have liked to see his numbers a little bit better last year. He kind of declined a little bit, but that's, you know, it happens to everybody, I guess. But I guess what you want to see in your goaltenders is improvement. As I mentioned, his numbers weren't sharp. He was .514-0 on the season. Again, that save percentage, .897, and you want to get it up to like .915 or so. So he's got some things to work on, but he is a big goaltender. He does have size, and we all know what Vasilevsky can do and Ben Bishop. They're all big goaltenders, and it seems like every team's looking for that goaltender who's 6'5", 6'6" now.
Right. A lot of times when you look at, especially a goaltender's numbers, you really have to look at the team that was in front of him too. And, you know, and I do think that Timrah in the Swedish Hockey League. Did not have a great year, and I think his numbers were reflected by that. But I think Ken is right. I mean, certainly the record wasn't great, but I still think the Red Wings saw enough in him that they think, well, let's see now. And sometimes this is, maybe it's not so bad he had a bad year. Let's see how he rebounds and what he does next season.
And the other thing, too, is, he could be dealt a little bit now. There's teams that are looking for older goalies that they can still develop. Maybe the Red Wings could use him as a bargaining chip, just because I mentioned he is 22 years old. The Wings have some goaltenders in their system right now that I think they're looking ahead to, like Phillip Larsson, who will probably play in Grand Rapids this year. And they drafted one in the draft just a couple of days ago. So, what you're looking at is trying to develop him, see what he can do. But on the other hand, how marketable is that goaltender or is that player?
So we'll see what the future is there. Let's move over to talking defensemen again. This was in the draft over the weekend. Albert Johansson, he was taken in the second round, pick 60. Now, we haven't really talked too much about the draft. Our second round was pretty crucial with having 3 picks. Art, what did you think of this one?
Well, again, I think that this is a defenseman that has a good upside and has some offense to his game. In 40 games, he has 29 points, 5 goals, 24 assists. A little bit of jam to him. 63 penalty minutes for a Swede is pretty high. But played in the Swedish Junior League. Probably will graduate to the Swedish Hockey League, which used to be the Swedish Elite League. Now it's the SHL, Swedish Hockey League. I think he's one of these guys that the Red Wings liked his overall game. Again, good hockey sense. If there was one thing that we heard from the Red Wings over the draft period is they just liked the competitiveness and the hockey sense that each player had. Johansson is certainly one of those guys, and he again. You don't know how to project some of these fellas, but I think you have to look at it and you have to think that if he can go into the SHL, the Swedish Hockey League next year, and progress and keep his numbers where they're at, show that he has a little bit of, continue that hockey sense, that education, again, he could be somebody, he's a high pick that the Red Wings could, 3-4 years down the road, he could certainly be in Detroit.
When the Red Wings drafted him, I had an opportunity to watch some video on Johansson, and a couple of things stood out. One of them is that he can really handle the puck well, and he's got some nice fluid stride. So as we watch him on the monitor when he skates, he's a pretty good skater. The other thing, too, is Dennis Cholowski, who played last year in the first half of the season with the Red Wings, he's calm as a cucumber. The same thing can be said about Johansson. He's got a high panic threshold. What that means is that when the situation gets tough in your own zone, he doesn't panic. He doesn't throw away the puck. He'll take a hit to make a play, and that's something that you really can't teach. That's something that comes through experience, and it seems like he has that capability to do that as well. I also mentioned defensemen who like to shoot the puck from the blue line. This guy can do that. He loves to shoot the puck. He's got a hard shot. So there's a lot to like about him, and I think down the road he could fit in well with this Red Wing team.
For those of you watching at home or work or wherever you may be, we are talking about goalies and defenders today for Team Howe, just in case you didn't catch on to that one yet. So let's go to our next goalie. That's Phillip Larsson. And he's actually been playing at the University of Denver, led them to a Frozen Four. Art, we'll start off with you. What do you think of Larsson?
Well, he was considered one of the best goalies in college hockey. I think Phillip's problem the last couple of seasons has been staying healthy. He had a groin issue that was finally, he had surgery, and he's completely healthy. The thing I like about Phillip Larsson, my favorite story about him is a couple of years ago, the summer showcase was at the USA Hockey Arena in Plymouth, and he was part of Team Sweden. He was their third goalie, and he was a Red Wing prospect. The Red Wings had drafted him, so we were talking to him, and he was very upset that the Swedish coaching staff had no idea who he was. Did not know him, and it was like, hey, I'm your goalie. I'm one of your goalies. Well, I was talking to a couple of Red Wing officials. We were hoping that he could get at least in one game for Team Sweden in this summer showcase, which, again, this summer is back in Plymouth. But not only did he get in a game, he started their last game against Finland, which is their huge rival, and he has a little bit of an attitude about him. He has a swagger about him. I really think if he progresses, he's going to go to Grand Rapids. I know the Red Wings want him to win that starting job. He, again, is very calm, considers himself not surprisingly, patterned his game after Henrik Lundqvist. And I think that, I love to make bold predictions. He could be the Red Wing goalie of the future.
Art, Daniela, I think this is a great opportunity for Phillip Larsson, and the fact that he knows that Howard and Bernier are veterans and they're almost, making their last runs here in the National Hockey League. He could be the goaltender of the future for Detroit. And this is a great opportunity for him to continue to learn and grow each and every year so that when he gets his opportunity at the NHL level, he comes in, he's ready to play, and he's a solid goaltender and can be a starter in the NHL. The thing I liked about him, we talked about the other two goaltenders previously, is the save percentage. .932 with Denver. Now it's college hockey, it's different than the pros, but at every level you have to get that save percentage up, he's already there.
Well, when he was in the USHL the year before with, I think it was Tri-City in the USHL, he held the record for his goals against average and his save percentage were the best in the history of the league. And so what I like about him, again, he has some bravado to him. He knows the situation. He knows that Jimmy Howard and Jonathan Bernier are getting older. He knows this is a great opportunity. That's why I'm really eager to see him go to Grand Rapids, win that job, be the Griffin starting goaltender, and maybe even if, and I'm not wishing ill will on Jimmy or Jonathan, but if a goaltender gets hurt, be that first call up. Maybe we can see him in the league next year.
But obviously, like everybody else, the Red Wings aren't in a rush to move him up.
No, they're not.
Great opportunity to get seasoned and get ready to play when you're called upon.
Art, you had got me excited for him earlier in the season. We talked a lot about him on the show, so he's someone that I'm very excited to see, and hopefully he does win that starting job in Grand Rapids. Let's move on to our next defender. We've got Owen Lalande. Guys, take it away, whoever wants to start that one.
Well, he's a free agent invitee, so certainly 68 games for Guelph, 41 points, 34 assists, penalty minutes. I would say that he is probably, at this point, I really don't know much about him, is that he has shown enough to the Red Wings that he has good, sound hockey skills and hockey mind. And, certainly we just talked about Caden Fulcher, even though he is a goaltender. Camp invitees do get looked at. The Red Wings are serious about them, and if he can prove something, maybe he gets an invite to the Prospects tournament.
Well, in 2018, he had an invite to the Toronto Maple Leafs rookie camp, and that was good for him. He always liked being a Maple Leaf. Now he likes being a Red Wing because they're giving him the shout-out, and they're giving him an opportunity here. But again, this is what it is about free agent invitees, is that you get an opportunity to show what you have. And if you can fit the mold somehow and fit into wherever the team wants you to fit in, you work at it, then you have a good opportunity to do what you can to make the team. A good example, I think, is Dan Cleary. When he played for the Red Wings, I know he had some pro experience, but he got one opportunity. He made the camp, made the team, worked as a fourth line, eventually became a big part of the Red Wing teams. Now he was an older player and he had some NHL experience, but if you're a young player at this level like Lalande, what you want is the coaches looking at you, and you've got to come here and work hard and show them what you're all about.
Well, Ken hit it right on the head, and this is a really great point by Ken, and it's really interesting. What he looks like today, what Lalande looks like today, let's see what he looks like on Friday, because he has to take it in, soak it in. He has to see where the needs are on this team, and he's going to have to essentially, in a very short period of time, show the Red Wings that he can adapt to that and that he has that skill set, that he has what they're looking for. All teams' needs are different. All teams play basically the same system, but modifications of the same system. He has to figure it out. The Red Wings are certainly not the Toronto Maple Leafs right now, and I think it'll be interesting to watch his progression over the next few days.
Yeah, he'll have a little bit more time with that 3-on-3 on Friday night. Right. And then, of course, we've got the red and white game on Saturday. We'll be back with a few more prospects for today, but first we're going to take a quick break, guys. Stay with us.
Take advantage of your opportunity to entertain friends, family, clients, or colleagues during a Red Wings game at Little Caesars Arena. The Red Wings provide several exciting packages, giveaways, pricing options, and benefits for groups of all sizes. Enjoy perks such as specially priced tickets, first priority to select your game and seats, no ticket service charge, and your group's name on the video board. Now accepting deposits for the 2019-20 season. Contact a dedicated group sales account executive today or visit DetroitRedWings.com/groups. We know you love your Red Wings, but we also know you're passionate about your university. That's why last season we launched College Nights. The Red Wings featured nights dedicated to students and alumni from universities around the state of Michigan. College Night packages include a specially priced Red Wings game ticket, a limited edition Red Wings hat in school colors, and a donation to that school. Visit redwings.com/college nights for more information.
Okay, guys, let's get right back into it with Drew DeRidder, goalie out of the USNDTP. He is on the U18 team, was playing over there in 17-18. He's also from Southern Michigan, so pretty local. Art, what are your thoughts on him?
Well, I'll tell you what, Michigan State is going through a bit of a rebuild right now, as we know. Danton Cole now, and I believe it'll be his 4th season, maybe his 3rd season. I mean, the numbers for a team that's rebuilding in a tough conference like the Big Ten, 3-8-5. Goals against of 3.23. Save percentage, not too bad, .906. But I know I keep saying this, and I don't mean to sound redundant, but especially with a goaltender, especially at a college level or a junior level, so much of it has to do with the team in front of them. And as I said, the Spartans are still trying to find offense, essentially, on their team. I mean, they're pretty good defensive team, so I think there's a lot of pressure when you play goal for Michigan State to keep that score down because they're having trouble scoring goals. Now, Taro Hirose, who we'll talk about later, obviously was one of the leading scorers in college hockey, but that wasn't the norm at Michigan State, so I think that there was a lot of pressure on Drew DeRidder.
One of the things you always like about a player, especially a goaltender, is what type of competitor he is, and that's one thing I noticed about DeRidder is that he's got a high compete level, and he rarely gives up a bad goal. And, if you've got a good mindset and your work habits are good and you've got this high compete level and he's right down in front of us, he tries to stop every shot that he can, never gives up on a shot. That's going to go a long way, I think, in his future. Now, will it get him to the next level? We'll just have to wait and find out. Good thing is he loves the Red Wings. That's his favorite team. Braden Holtby is his favorite goaltender. Can't go wrong there.
And I know a lot of players do this, but as we said, he played at the U.S. National Development Team, the U18, who had a stellar draft this year. There were a lot of guys coming out of there. As a goalie, what is the benefit of playing both college hockey and for the National Development Team?
Well, I mean, if you're on the development program, if you're on the U17 and U18 teams, you're one of the best players in the United States, at your age group. When you're playing against the best, you can only get better. And I think, and he was playing against some very, very high-end talent. As I said, best in the United States. I think it can only benefit him. You always want to play against the best, right, Ken? You always want to prove yourself against the best.
And, when you talk to former Red Wing goaltenders like Kevin Hodgson or Manny Legacy, they'll always tell you that the toughest part wasn't playing in the National Hockey League game, so to speak. It was going up against Yzerman, Shanahan, Fedorov in practice, Larionov, and those are the kind of guys that make you better as a player and make you better as a goaltender. When you go up against the best of the best in the world, it's going to make you a better player.
Well, Ken's so right. I always used to say, in the Red Wings, when they were in the heyday, when they had those legendary teams, some of the best hockey I ever saw was Red Wing practices because Scotty would inflate the roster a little bit, and these guys were playing for jobs. I mean, obviously Steve and Sergey and Brendan weren't, and, a few of the others, the grind line guys, but that's exactly right. It is amazing to see the compete level, and that is another thing too, Daniela and Ken, that that the Red Wings really talked about when they were assessing their draft is that everybody that they drafted or everybody that they're looking for, everybody that's on this ice today is highly competitive. They have a competitive nature to them, meaning that they not only do they want to win, they want to be the best they can be.
All right, and let's move on to another defender. We've got Cooper Moore. He was drafted in the 5th round of this past weekend's draft. What did you think, Art? We took a lot of defensemen. We said 5. What did you think of Cooper in that pack of
Well,
defenders?
you know, he played in the league in Connecticut, and it's kind of a high school league, 31 points in 28 games, 13 goals, 18 assists. You know, certainly, again, number one, as I just said, they liked his competitiveness, and I think they liked his offensive upside. I think that this is somebody, you know, as he keeps developing, you know, when you get down in where you're drafted there, these kids are realistic too. You know, they realize, you know, when you're in the 5th, 6th, 7th round of the NHL draft, you have a certain aspect of your game that your team likes, but you're kind of a project and you have to round it out. They'll see, I believe he's going, if I'm going off the top of my head, eventually he's slated, I think, to go to North Dakota. And so that's a great hockey program. So I think the Red Wings are just going to watch his progression, and if he progresses like they hope, you know, certainly he could earn himself a contract with the Red Wings.
Well, the thing about Moore is that I think when you select a player in the 5th round, as you mentioned, I think when you're an organization, you can go for the fences. You can try to hit the home run. And what you want to try to do is see if you can find that diamond in the rough. And as Art mentioned earlier, if you see a player that you like, that you want to take a chance on, why not select a player like that in the 5th or 6th round? I think that's what the Red Wings see in Moore, is the fact that, hey, maybe he pans out, maybe he doesn't, but he could be one of those guys, a surprise, and I think everybody likes him, everybody that has scouted him, so why not take a shot at a player like him and his capability? The other thing is Central Scouting had him ranked at 88th for North American skaters, so they really didn't rank him that high, but sometimes there are intangibles that scouting staffs look at, and I think the Red Wings have seen something in Moore that they like, and they've got a plan in the future, and they hope that, like I said, they hit the home run with him.
Right, and going to North Dakota, I mean, North Dakota is one of those college hockey programs, and Ken knows this very, very well, that if someone's going to North Dakota, you take notice of that. You say, whoa. I mean, because that is year in and year out, and every school has a down year once in a while, but that is one of the top programs in the United States. And if he's going to North Dakota, I think the Red Wings look at it and say, he's in pretty good hands. Let's see how he develops.
And for what I've got on him, he's going to play in North Dakota in the 2021 year, and he's going to play in British Columbia, actually on the same team that Dennis Cholowski played for. A guy, he's not here right now, but he was played well for the Red Wings last season when he was up here.
Right. I mean, my favorite team is the Trail BC Smoke Eaters, and
not the Vancouver Giants.
I think it is the Vancouver Giants, right? So, but if he's not a smoke eater, I guess. Do you know what a smoke eater is?
I have no idea.
Yeah, wait, what is
I don't think they know.
But it's a cool name.
It is a cool name, and their logo are literally 2 smokestacks.
Really?
Yeah. So, you know, I don't know if the EPA would be into it, but
that's funny. All right, guys, we're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey Hockey Town! We're excited to share that our 2019 Detroit Red Wings Youth Hockey Camp is on. This summer, we are offering 75 minutes of on-ice training and 35 minutes of dry land training provided each day in the BELFOR Training Center located inside Little Caesars Arena. During this 3-day camp, you'll be able to sharpen your skills for your upcoming season, all while learning the love for the game of hockey. The camp focuses on both on-ice and off-ice development with instruction by 4-time Stanley Cup champion Kirk Maltby and Red Wings coaches.
Yeah, no, it's a blast. It's, all different ages, all different skill set, but I think at the end of the day, we try and give them a little something to think about, but at the end of the day, have some fun.
All campers receive an official Red Wings Youth Hockey Camp jersey and a personal 5x7 camp photo. There will be special camp giveaways and prizes. Current Detroit Red Wings player is scheduled to appear each day, subject to change. You'll receive a certificate of participation signed by coaches, as well as a 2019-20 preseason ticket offer. The camp runs July 15th to the 17th with age groups from 6 to 12. And for the first time ever, a girls-only group ages 9 to 12. No matter your skill level, the Red Wings Youth Camp is for all. Don't miss your chance to be a part of the fun this summer. Visit DetroitRedWings.com/youthcamp to register now.
He shoots, he scores! Phillip Zadina, his first National Hockey League goal!
Well, there you go, guys. Some of the Red Wings' most recent first-round draft picks. Moritz Seider now joins that crew. Guys, before we talk specifically him, I wanted to talk to you about the draft overall, those first 6 picks. Is that kind of what you expected?
I do think so. I think that it was really odd if the Red Wings, this was the first draft that the Red Wings did not select a player in the history of the draft from the Canadian Hockey League. Not a player from the Ontario League, the Western League, or the Quebec League. And asking Steve about it, he said that there were some players that they wanted, especially in that first round. So I'm looking at maybe the guy that they would have taken would have been Kirby Dach, a big center, taken 3rd overall by Chicago. Turcotte was moving up everybody's board, and then Bowen Byram, the defenseman that conventional wisdom thought if he were available at 6, the Red Wings would have taken him. After that, because there were so many high-skilled forwards, they wouldn't do it, and lo and behold, the Red Wings decide, we're here, Mo Seider isn't going to last through 10. Right. We're at 6. We like him. We tried to trade down. Boom, let's go for him. So I'm not really surprised how any draft plays out because I do think teams play it close to the vest, and a lot of services are all over, but just like anybody else, I think people are trying to build up their own reputation and credibility, so they'll throw a couple of people in there that you're thinking, whoa, but then if they hit on it, it's like you look like a genius.
I was watching the draft, and I don't think there were any surprises. We knew who was going to go first, second, third, fourth. But I had to wonder, if Turcotte would have been available, would the Red Wings have selected him as opposed to going to a defenseman? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they like Seider, but to me, Turcotte was a guy that when I was watching, I was saying like, hey, this is a possibility if he does drop. Obviously, he didn't. He went to the Kings, and Steve Yzerman drafted Seider. So I think the Red Wings were looking at a defenseman anyway, but on the other hand, I was just wondering, from my point of view, whether or not they would have selected Turcotte if he would have fell.
Well, again, and I can only go by what, and maybe I'm reading too much into what Steve was saying, because when I asked him about not taking a player from the CHL, he said that there were 2 that they were really looking at, and I assumed he was talking about the first round. I'm thinking it's got to be Dach and Bowen Byram then, and they weren't there. I am not surprised that they went defense. The Red Wings really need to shore up their defensive prospects and their blue line, and so I'm thinking if Dach would have been there, they might have taken him. A guy who was there that was Dylan Cousins, and He did not go to Detroit, so I think that they had a few players selected. A couple of them were taken ahead of number 6 pick, and then Mo Seider was there. And again, they said, we need a defenseman. He's big, right-handed shot. Let's go for him.
Here's what I think is positive for the fans watching the stream right now, is that the Red Wings are building a foundation on the blue line, and they're hoping that these players, the defensemen that they drafted, in 3 or 4 or 5 years are going to be a key core to this team. So you look at Hronek, Chalowski, if Seider can come through, McIsaac. These are
Gustav Lindstrom.
These are guys that could be together for a long, long time. And I think of the Blackhawks when they had Duncan Keith and Seabrook and Hjalmarsson. That was a good core group right there. Now, if these guys pan out, and I think the Red Wings are hoping they will, you're going to see this blue line core together for many, many years.
I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, if you can have a good young defensive core, and if you can have a great anchor. Now here in Detroit, obviously we were blessed with Nicholas Lidstrom. When Steve went down to Tampa, he had Victor Hedman right there. If they can have a centerpiece like that they can build around, and it looks like it's coming together. McIsaac, they were ecstatic when he fell to them in the second round last year. I think deep down they're pretty happy that they got Mo Seider, and they really like him. We haven't talked about him, we will later in the week, but the Finnish defenseman, Ante, I want to say, because it's my favorite dessert, tiramisu.
Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with that.
but they really, really like him. And another thing we haven't really talked about, Håkan Andersson, the European super scout, was all over this draft. I mean, if you look at it, this was a very heavily influenced European draft, and I think that Håkan Andersson and his group really, really sold some of these guys. And the thing that he kept saying, and this is the word of the day for everybody listening, compete level. Compete level. Everybody that the Red Wings drafted this last draft competes extremely very, very hard, and that's something they really like.
And one guy that's definitely going to love the compete level of all these players is Coach Jeff Blashill. We haven't really heard from him yet, so let's see what he had to say about that first round on Friday night.
You guys seeing him that made you pick him that high? Because it was a bit of a shock. I mean, nobody had him going inside the top 10 probably.
Yeah, I'm not involved really in that part of it. For me, it's more just the opportunity to see him. He was one of the few guys I actually did see. Steve and I, Steve asked me my opinion on him, and my opinion is that he's going to be a real good defenseman for a long time. I don't. You'd have to ask our management group about the rankings and all that. But at the end of the day, all that matters is how good the player is. I know we've got a real good player in Tyler Bertuzzi that a lot of people thought we went off the board on a number of years ago, but yet it looks like a heck of a pick now. So, I'm not concerned about that at all. I know that he's got a real good chance to be a good player.
You did see him in the exhibition game in Mannheim, right?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I did see him in that game. Yeah, you're right.
Toe drag by Patrick Kane.
Well,
have a better memory of him?
Yeah, he's not alone on that. A lot of guys have been toe dragged by Patrick Kane, but it's easier for me to watch him when I was in the stands than from the opposing bench. At that time we're just trying to figure out our own team. So I spent a couple days watching him specifically just to see how he did, and I was real impressed.
The fact that he played against and with men, it's got to help his development at least somewhat, a little bit more than some of these other kids.
Well, I think especially on D, the game, as you get into men's hockey, it's a more mature game, and so I think it's a little bit easier predictor of success if a guy goes and because that type of game is going to transfer. Now the big sheet is the one thing that's different. What I liked is when I watched him under pressure, he was able to make passes through people, and that's what the best D do. They almost don't see the first forechecker. All they see is the options, and I thought he did a good job of that.
What can he ultimately develop into, do you think, in the NHL?
Say that again?
What can he ultimately develop into in the NHL? What can he...
Well, I think I never like to over-predict on people. I think it's an extremely hard league. I got a ton of respect for how hard it is to be a great player in the league. So I always try to temper my expectation, but certainly he looks like a guy who can be a top 4D and help you win hockey games. Now, does he become a top pair D? We'll see. That's all in time. But he looks like a guy to me. Again, for me, you need big, efficient, smart defenseman, and he's that.
He shoots right. You gotta.
Yeah, he shoots right. Yeah, you know what? I'm not as concerned about the hand. Like, we've had lots of rights now over the last few years, you know. So I'm not as concerned about the hand as I am about how good the player is.
Jeff, is he back in Mannheim, do you think, next season? Or
I honestly have.
Opening night lineup opposite Oliver Kaski.
Yeah. Let's watch him in development camp. I have no idea what the best step for him in his development. I know for sure that Steve will want to make sure that we do whatever's best for his long-term development. That's going to be the number one focus.
Opening night again Sunday, October 6th. It says 5 p.m. on there. We're not sure if that's going to be the exact right time for that, but regardless, it's going to be Sunday, October 6th against the Dallas Stars. We'll have them in town. You know, October seems so far away, doesn't it? But that's probably going to be here before we know it.
Well, you're right about that. And, you know, once September rolls around, you've got the camp up there, and you got training camp and prospects tournament. It goes by in a hurry, and the season will be here before you know it.
Yes, we do, or it will. And we've got a couple more guys to talk about here before we end the stream for today. So let's talk about Alec McRae. He's another defenseman. As I said, we were talking about defensemen and goalies today, but the blue line is something the Red Wings are really, really focusing on. So Art, kick it off. What do you think about McRae?
Well, he was signed by the Griffins on April 11th. It goes to show you how much the game has changed from, Ken, when you and I played many, many years ago when the equipment was like horse feathers and stuff like that.
Horsehair, yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly, horsehair. He's from California.
Yeah.
McRae's from California, playing for the Griffins. Looks like a good, solid defenseman. Played for Cornell in the ECAC. 12 points, 26 penalty minutes. I think that this is a fella that, you know, Grand Rapids obviously signed. Want them to be on the blue line. Probably signed him because, you know, Grand Rapids is going through a little bit of influx as they do every year. And here is a fella that, you know, depending on what he does with the Griffins, I think, you know, he's not a Red Wing signee. He's signed by Grand Rapids. That if he progresses, you know, who knows? You know, maybe he could someday find himself, you know, at least in the conversation with the Red Wings.
And another player who has a lot of size, 6'3". That's another big defenseman in the ranks for the Detroit Red Wings. And he's always been a pretty good defensive D-man. In fact, in 2017-18 as a junior, I think he won an award in the ECAC as far as being on the blue line. And also, he was plus 18 that year. And anytime you're a plus player, no matter where you're playing, you're doing something good. And I always say that you got to be the best if you want to make it to the National Hockey League. Every level that you play on or play at, you have to be the best. And certainly, he's got that ability. At least he's shown that ability in college.
And you mentioned being a plus player, being very important. In his 4 years at Cornell, he was plus 41 total. So that's a really good stat.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, you know, when you look at the plus minus, and I know it's still kind of debated sometimes. I mean, you know, certainly there's that odd thing where you're just stepping on the ice and the other team's scoring a goal, and suddenly you're a minus. And but, you know, it can happen the other way around. I think it's a pretty true statistic. I think that there's a lot of weight against it. And, you know, certainly, here is somebody that, you know, the Griffins offered a professional contract to, and we'll just have to wait and see. You know, he's big, he fits the mold. I mean, where the Red Wings are at this time, in all honesty, is you can just never have enough prospects. I mean, that's why they traded for an extra pick this time. 11, 10, and 11, I think, over the last 3 seasons is how many guys that they've brought in. That's a lot of hockey players. And then next year with the draft in Montreal, I think is another 10 guys at least that they have right now. So, you know, it's a work in progress. And, you know, a lot of the young men that we're talking about today, you know, they might be 3 or 4 years down the road.
And again, not everybody's going to make it. And like I said before, there are some players that you can use as a marketing tool where you can go out and, you know, as a bargaining chip and maybe trade for somebody if they don't pan out in your organization. But what I really like about Detroit, seeing all these defensemen, we've got some size back there. And just listening to the fans over the years, they always said, oh, well, the Red Wings blue line core, they're not big enough, they're not strong enough, they're too small. Well, now you can't say that because the future has all these guys at 6'3" or bigger, and there's going to be some size. And not only that, you got to be able to skate and move the puck and add some offense to your defensive game. And that certainly are the type of players that the Red Wings have drafted on the blue line.
And talking about sizable defensemen, let's move on to, last but certainly not least for the day, we've got Kasper Kontensalo. He's a Finnish defender. He plays at Boston University right now. He's also 6'3", and he was drafted in the 3rd round in 2017. So another sizable defender.
Well, he's a real gritty defenseman. Did not score a goal. His offense isn't quite where the Red Wings would want it to be, but he blocks shots. He hits people. He's physical. He's somebody to show you where his personality is at. The Red Wings always have their team nutritionist, Lisa McDowell, will always show them how to cook and prepare food. And so I was asking him about it after his first rookie camp, and it was still up in Traverse City, or the development camp, and I said, well, what did you think? Are you going to start eating better and cooking better? He goes, I've already sent my my menu to my personal chef. And I'm thinking, wow, personal chef. And he goes, yes, my mother. You know, so, I mean, he's got a pretty good sense about him. You know, he's funny. I know that all his teammates like him. I mean, the people gravitate to him. Even here at this camp, they will. But again, he has size. He's not afraid to throw his weight around, and defensively in his own end, he's fine. He just has to find a little bit of upside offensively.
One of the things I think the Red Wings looked at, Art and Danielle, is the fact that when he was 17 years old, he left to play in North America to adjust to the smaller ice surface here. So he's already planning ahead as to how to adjust his game to play in the National Hockey League on smaller ice surfaces. The other thing about him, a good story, and I know, Art, you like a good story.
That's right.
When he was in Finland, one of his father's work buddies was the father of Valtteri Filppula. And that's how he became a Red Wing fan, because he saw his dad wearing a Red Wing hat one day, and he says, you know what? My new favorite team are the Detroit Red Wings. So.
Right, and Phil finally gave him a shirt and autographed puck, right. You know, and where he plays at BU, you know, their uniform is not that far off of the Red Wing uniform. It's always red and white. But that is the thing about Kasper is that the Red Wings really did like that. And I can remember, again, at the summer showcase, even though it was against Phillip, Larsson, and Sweden, Finland lost every game in this summer showcase, but they were all very, very close. So he boldly predicted that they would beat Sweden. They did not. They lost 6-5, but goes to show you he has a little bit of a jam to him. He's not afraid to speak his mind, and you know, he's a kid I have to be honest for. I'm rooting for because he's just a fine individual, and as Ken said, he's been planning on this. Anybody to leave Finland, Europe country, European, and leave to adapt to the big ice surface, he's already had his mind on the NHL.
You know, when you look at defensemen, I think you look at offensive defensemen. Art, you brought up a good point about him being a defensive guy that's going to be hard to play against. But some of the things that I think Kontensalo needs to work on is, you know, his improved foot speed. And down the road, if he's going to defend against guys like Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid and some of the speedsters in the league, you've got to have good foot speed, and you've got to be able to keep up with those players, especially in your own zone. And if he can do that, he'll be a strong defender on the blue line for years to come.
Right, no, certainly. I mean, you know, I remember when they drafted him, talking to several Red Wing officials back then, they said, we actually project him to be in the NHL. At this point, depending on how he develops, he's going to be a 5 or 6 pair. You know, he'll be in the 3rd pair, but he has enough on the defensive game, and again, a thing that we can't, you know, he likes to hit people, and he blocks a lot of shots. So that is something that, you know, the Red Wings believe that if he can, and Ken made a great point, you know, he has to get quicker. He needs that foot speed. You know, I mean, you know, you can't hit what you can't catch, you know what I mean? And that will be the determining factor for Kasper as far as an NHL career.
Yes, so that's our last prospect to go over specifically for the day today. So I just want to get your guys' thoughts. It can be any player, doesn't have to be a goalie, doesn't have to be a defenseman. Who are you most excited to see this week, and why is that?
Well, you know, I'm going to say the obvious. I'm excited to see Moritz Seider.
Yep.
I've read a lot about him. You know, I was hoping that he would have been the Red Wings this year's Jared McIsaac and fell to him at the 35 pick. You know, Chris Draper told me I was loony to even think that, but I want to see what he does. I think that he is on a fast track as long as he can physically mature. I think with him, it's just he's going to have to grow into his body a little bit. I think the skill set is there. The mind is definitely there. If his body catches up relatively quickly, I think the Red Wings have found themselves a pretty darn good player, and I'm just eager to see what he does in this environment.
I think all eyes are going to be on Moritz Seider, of course, because he is a first-round pick. But one of the players that I'm going to look at is goaltender Phillip Larsson. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I know down the road the Red Wings are going to need a goaltender. And Jimmy's up there in age. Don't know how long he's going to play, or Jonathan Bernier. We know he's under contract for another 2 years. But sooner or later, the Red Wings are going to have to find a goaltender. And so I'm going to keep my eye on Larsson. I want to see how he plays in this development camp. I want to see how he does in the exhibition games. And certainly I'll be keeping an eye on him and how he plays in Grand Rapids as well.
So you guys went defender and goalie. I think we're going to talk a lot about him when we see him on the ice later this week, but Phillip Zadina is going to be here, and that's a guy that everybody's very, very interested in, waiting to see what's going to happen with him next year. What are your predictions? Do you think he's going to be in Grand Rapids? Do you think he's going to come up? What do you think?
Well, I would love to see the Phil as he goes by. I would love to see the Phil in Detroit. I still think, and no offense to Anthony Mantha here, I think he has the hardest and most accurate shot on the Red Wings. I mean, getting it off. He probably needed to play against men, get a little physically stronger. I would say that he is going to be given every opportunity to make the Red Wings next season. And it's up to him. If he doesn't, then he really has to go down to Grand Rapids and dominate at the AHL level and make it, much like David Pasternak did. And we talked about this last year when he was sent down to Grand Rapids. Pasternak played for Boston and was sent down for the first half of the year to Providence, I believe, their AHL affiliate. But he played so well that they brought him up, and obviously he never left. I think that Zadina, if he doesn't make the team out of training camp, has to go down, play very, very well, score numerous goals, get that shot off, show why the Red Wings drafted him 6th overall 2 years ago. And once he does that and proves that he belongs, I think once he's here to stay, he was not bad in that 9-game audition last year. I think the Red Wings thought, but he didn't go back to Grand Rapids and then dominate like they thought he would after he got the 9-game audition up here in Detroit. So I really do think that if Zadina doesn't make it, if he has to go back to Grand Rapids, he has to make it a very quick, short time in Grand Rapids and then get back up here in Detroit and stick in this lineup.
Hey, let's face it, the Red Wings need goal scoring. And we talked about Anthony Mantha and his potential and where he can be. Athanasiou, we've seen the numbers from him. But the Red Wings need somebody to come in and be a goal scorer, and I think that's the role that Phillip Zadina has on this club. We talked about Joe Veleno, and we'll see him here too. He's more of a setup kind of guy, and I hope he can make the team as well. But I think the Wings need scoring, and to me, if Phillip Zadina can find the twine, if he can get open and have someone feed him the puck, he can be a dynamic scorer in this league. And if he can get on a roll where he can start scoring, I think it just means greater things for the Red Wings and for Zadina as well.
Right, and watch, if Veleno's another guy I know we're going to talk about, but watch Veleno and Zadina could be on the same line. And, because Veleno, even though he's 19, he played 4 years already in the Quebec League because he had exceptional status and played in at least in 15. So if Veleno doesn't make the Red Wings, and they're all going to get shots, Steve's been pretty open about that. Hey, there's jobs available. Let's, here's the puck, go out and win a job. Veleno's going to play in Grand Rapids too. So that could be maybe a blessing in disguise is if Zadina and Veleno play down for the Griffins for a little while, get some chemistry, come up to Detroit, and suddenly, you have guys who are, ready to make their mark in the NHL.
Carly Johnston's actually going to have an interview with Joe Veleno coming up here in just a few minutes, so we'll hear from him and what he has to say about this week of development camp. Back to Zadina for a second. When you guys were talking about him, you both seemed like there was a little hesitance, like there's something that he needs to improve before he's up here in the big leagues. What is the one thing that you think he needs to get better at?
I think he has to get stronger, too. I mean, that's one of the things that he realized when he came up here. Not only in the preseason games, but for the 9-game stint that he was here, is he understands the strength of these guys. And his ability, or his bread and butter to me, is the ability to get open. He has the shot. We all know that. But in this league, you have so little time to get that shot away, and he's got a good release. He's got to find areas in the ice to get open. Someone needs to get him the puck. But if he can get to the open areas of the ice and get that shot away, his chances of scoring goals go way up.
Well, it's time and space. That's what Ken's talking about, and that's exactly what Phillip Zadina has to find. I think when he got to the pro level, and I think that when you get into the AHL, you don't really realize that it is the second best league in the entire world. I mean, this is a men's league, and they play for keeps down there. Everybody's trying to get to that next level or prove that they still have something in the tank, depending on where they're at in their career. And I think that that's what Phillip Zadina has to do. As Ken said, he has the shot. He just has to find a way to get open. He has to adapt to the speed, and he was doing that, though. He had a really odd score line. It said that he would either score 2 goals a game or he wouldn't get any, and then he would score 2 goals, a game later 2 goals, then 2 goals, and then go 20 games without scoring a goal. Obviously, a goal scorer can't do that.
Well, the other thing, too, is when you think about all the great players that play in this game, and just look at the Red Wings, Yzerman, Lidstrom, just to name 2 right there, they were always consistent. Konstantinov was consistent, too. He played at a level, he very rarely did one of these like a roller coaster. He played at the same level. You're looking for consistency. And as you mentioned, as far as goal scoring, if you're going to be a consistent goal scorer in the league, like a Kucherov or a Pasternak, you've got to be able to be a consistent goal scorer. Find ways to get that puck into the net, and that's going to help your team win.
Right, and that's exactly what Zadina does. And again, it comes down to finding time and space. You got to find the space, as Ken said, to get the shot off, and you're not going to have much time.
Yeah.
So you better. That's what he needs to work on.
And I promise, guys, we're going to have more on those two, Veleno and Zadina, a lot throughout the week, a lot of other prospects as well throughout development camp, and you can catch it right here on the stream. Tune into Facebook, Twitter, DetroitRedWings.com, or YouTube, and we'll have it tomorrow, Thursday, Friday night for the 3-on-3 tournament, and Saturday for the red and white game. That's an extremely exciting schedule. I have to say, I am so pumped about that 3-on-3, though. I don't know why I'm so excited for it, but I love overtime hockey in the regular season, so I'm excited to watch some of our prospects play.
I think it's time for. I think the players will like it because the prospects can show off a little bit of their skill, and it's fun. It's fun, and so even though this is a highly competitive environment that they're here at development camp this week, that'll be something, as Ken did many times as a young man, let his hair down and just
whatever hair I got
and have a good time.
Well, the other thing about 3-on-3 play too is it's changed, it's evolved. And when they first came in with the 3-on-3, it was all run and gun.
Right.
Now what you want to do is protect the puck, and if the play's not there, you circle back out to center, you make a line change, you hang on to the puck, and then make things happen. What you don't want to do is get into the run and gun, odd man rushes, because that can be a double-edged sword.
All right, guys, and as I mentioned, Carly Johnston has Joe Veleno with her, so let's toss it over to Carly.
Thanks, guys. I'm here with Joe Veleno. We have day 1 of development camp. How are you feeling? It's your second time back.
Yeah, it feels pretty good to be back on the ice over here. I missed it a lot over the year, and I was pretty anxious to get things going again, and here we are, and it's a good first day back.
You had a stellar 2018-19 season. Do you feel like you've grown as a player enough to wear that winged wheel on your sweater and play in an NHL game?
Well, I hope so. I think I proved a lot this year in juniors, and obviously the pros and juniors is a whole different ball game, and I'm coming into this camp. Obviously, I'm going to train hard this summer and give it my best come training camp.
What are you looking to get out of this full week here at Little Caesars Arena?
Just learning. Everything I can pick up from from all the pros around, all the coaches, all the trainers, learning how to be a pro and become a pro. So I'm picking everything in one by one, and like I said, I'm excited to get things going and excited to learn a lot.
Well, thank you so much. Looking forward to watching you out on the ice. Guys, back to you.
Well, thank you, Carly. Great to hear from Joe Veleno. We'll have a lot more on him and every other prospect throughout the week at this development camp. Again, you can catch the stream on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and our website all week long starting at 11:30. These guys will be joining me every day. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow.
See y'all.